the moment the cabin door slammed shut behind us, I realized we had made a terrible mistake. The mountain trail had disappeared beneath fresh snow, the wind screamed against the wooden walls like something alive, and the old heater gave one tired cough before dying completely. We were stranded miles from the nearest town with only one bed, no phone signal, and a night that promised to be the coldest of the year. My best friend looked at me with trembling lips and whispered that we could argue about pride in the morning because right now surviving the night mattered more than anything else. If you believe kindness and second chances can change lives, we'd love to hear your thoughts after the story and hope you'll continue joining us here at the Kindness Project for more heartfelt journeys. The trip had been meant as a celebration instead of a test. Rowan and Mira had been best friends for almost 8 years, surviving college exams, failed relationships, family heartbreak, and countless ordinary days that became unforgettable simply because they faced them together. They had promised that no matter where life carried them, they would always make time for one adventure every winter. This year they chose an old mountain cabin that had once belonged to Rowan's grandfather. It was quiet, surrounded by towering pine trees, and far away from the noise of the city. They expected laughter, hot chocolate, and long conversations by a warm fireplace. Instead, they found darkness, silence, and a freezing cabin that seemed forgotten by the rest of the world. The first few hours were manageable. They unpacked their bags, collected firewood, and tried every switch they could find. The fireplace burned weakly because the chimney was partially blocked by snow, and the heater refused to come back to life no matter how many times Rowan checked the fuse box. The temperature inside continued dropping until every breath became visible. Their gloves stayed on even indoors, and their fingers slowly lost feeling. The weather forecast they had ignored now became painfully real as snow buried the road leading back down the mountain. As evening settled over the forest, the cabin transformed into a lonely island surrounded by endless white. Every creak in the wooden walls sounded louder. Every gust of wind reminded them how isolated they truly were. Rowan blamed himself for insisting on the trip. He had wanted to escape the pressure of work and the loneliness that had quietly settled into his life after losing his father the previous spring. Mira knew the real reason he had chosen this cabin. It was the last place where his father had smiled without pain, and Rowan hoped returning there might somehow make the memories hurt less. The cold became impossible to ignore. They layered every blanket they could find across the single bed, but it barely seemed enough. Rowan insisted he would sleep on the floor wrapped inside his sleeping bag while Mira took the bed. She refused immediately. Neither of them wanted the other to suffer, yet neither could find another solution. Hours passed with stubborn silence until Mira's hands began shaking uncontrollably. Looking at the icy window where frost spread like delicate flowers, she quietly admitted that they would never stay warm separated. Pride had no place in a survival situation. She simply told him to get into the bed because she was freezing, and in that simple moment every awkward thought disappeared beneath something much more important. It was never about romance or embarrassment. It was about protecting someone who had protected you for years. They lay back to back beneath every blanket in the cabin while the wind continued its relentless attack outside. Little by little, warmth returned. Their breathing slowed. The silence that once felt uncomfortable became peaceful instead. Without looking at one another, they spoke honestly for the first time in months. Rowan confessed how deeply he blamed himself for not visiting his father more often during his illness. Mira admitted she had accepted a job overseas but had been terrified to tell him because she feared losing the friendship that had become her safest place in the world. The conversation stretched through the night. They laughed about embarrassing college memories, remembered impossible dreams they once believed would come true, and cried over losses they had hidden behind fake smiles. The broken heater somehow repaired something much more important between them. They realized that real friendship was never measured by how many years people stayed close, but by whether they could still tell each other the truth when it mattered most. Just before sunrise, a loud cracking sound echoed outside. Rowan rushed to the window and saw a massive pine branch had fallen across the front steps under the weight of heavy snow. Had they tried leaving during the night, they could have been seriously injured. Instead of feeling trapped, they suddenly felt grateful. Sometimes delays protected us from dangers we never saw coming. When daylight finally painted the mountains in soft gold, the storm had passed. Neighbors from another cabin noticed there was no smoke rising from the chimney and hiked over carrying extra firewood, blankets, and a portable heater. Their unexpected kindness turned a frightening night into one filled with hope. Watching complete strangers help without expecting anything in return reminded Rowan that goodness still existed everywhere if people were willing to look for it. As they packed to leave later that afternoon, Rowan stood quietly on the porch overlooking the snowy valley. He no longer felt like someone running away from grief. Instead, he felt as though he had finally carried part of its weight with someone who genuinely cared. Mira smiled as they locked the cabin door behind them, knowing that although life would soon take them to different cities, distance could never erase the friendship that had survived one unforgettable winter night. If this story touched your heart, take a quiet moment today to appreciate someone who has stood beside you through life's coldest seasons. The smallest act of kindness can become the warmest memory someone carries forever. Special request: tell us in the comments about a friend whose kindness changed your life. Your story might give hope to someone who needs it today. As they drove down the mountain beneath a bright blue sky, neither of them remembered the broken heater or the uncomfortable night as a disaster anymore. They remembered it as the moment they stopped pretending to be strong alone and discovered that sometimes the greatest gift we can offer another person is simply being there when the world feels unbearably cold. Long after the snow melted, that single winter night remained the warmest memory either of them would ever carry, proving that kindness, honesty, and genuine friendship can turn even the harshest storm into the beginning of a beautiful new chapter.